Wani That Gator is one of those anomalies when it comes to gaming, as it has its origins in a parody game that it has no doubt since long surpassed in quality. To give you a quick history lesson to sketch the context here, once upon a time, Goodbye Volcano High was announced as mainly a PlayStation title, but also coming to PC all the way back in 2020, with a release date aiming for 2021. The game promised to be an emotional visual novel with a focus on music, with anthropomorphic dinosaur people as its cast, and the story also focusing on the extinction event. This initial release date eventually turned into an actual release in August of 2023. This, combined with the predictably poor writing, preachy narrative, the involvement of Sweet Baby Inc., and all of the other stuff surrounding it, made it not liked by the real gaming audience, 4chan, and especially the scalies on 4chan. So, what did some prophetic mad lads do as a response to that initial trailer? Make their own spin-off, rip-off parody visual novel based on the same anthropomorphic dino characters and call it Snoot Game, where you, I assume, can boob the snoot of main non-binary character Fang. I haven't played Snoot Game myself, though perhaps I should after playing Wani Gator, but from what I've seen of it online, it seems like a pretty funny jab at whatever Goodbye Volcano High was going for at the time, and by absolutely mugging it by releasing 2 years before its release, it definitely had its own little audience cut out for it. From what I can tell, Wani That Gator, aside from beating Goodbye Volcano High in title length, is a more serious and well-developed story within the same setting of Snoot Game, which was based on the setting of Goodbye Volcano High. Wani Gator is also made by Cavemanon of now Snoot Game fame. Wani Gator promises to be more fleshed out, have higher production value, and generally be a better experience than either Snoot Game or Goodbye Volcano High, and this is the game/story we will look at today. Wani That Gator, which I'll refer to and have been referring to as Wani Gator for the rest of the video, is a visual novel. It is also built on a way smaller budget than Goodbye Volcano High, lacking any real voice acting or epic rhythm minigames. Truly a sad day for gaming. This is of course countered by its lower price tag compared to Volcano High. When it comes to the visuals here, that is, the characters with their different poses and stuff, I think the game actually does a very good job at portraying and animating the cast well. The character designs are very nice, as well as just nice to look at in general. One of my personal turn-offs when it comes to anthros like these is actually a lack of human hair. So just these characters all actually having a head of hair, even if it might not make complete sense biologically, is a very good thing in my book. There's also a bunch of details to these characters, with I think Liz being perhaps the clearest one to illustrate this with. Liz being some kind of brachiosaur, her neck is absolutely massive, and there's a lot of attention to that in drawings as well as the writing itself, with it being included in some jokes and visual gags as well. The same thing goes for the rest of the cast, with the main character Inko, the human, being fairly expressive at times, even with his complete lack of face. Aside from these static designs, there's also a decent amount of movement to them. It can be just as simple as Olivia here going up and down to signify her painting, but these minor movements add a lot and they're especially present in the start of the game. The true cherry on top moments here are the fully animated segments, which are rare and reserved for the more pivotal story moments, but are very well done and absolute kino. Aside from that, there's also some more specific drawings that underline an important moment, with a special focus on the art here of course, as it's a main theme of the story itself, and all of these are all very nice to look at as well. The backgrounds can be a little bit of a mixed bag. Some of these are very clearly hand-drawn, some better than others, and other backgrounds are clearly just a stock photo with a filter over it, though even then these stock photos have details added to them, like a clothing store having anthro mannequins, for example. Some of these backgrounds then lack certain details I would expect in them, like in this art gallery I would expect more actual art to be shown here, but the good definitely outweighs the bad here, and I think that on the visual front, Wani Gator got it all figured out. The music in general is also nice, with some tracks, especially towards the different endings, definitely standing out, even if, according to the credits, some of these tracks are just stock music. There's also some limited sound effects here and there to really emphasize something physical happening, but in general, for a visual novel, I think the whole technical shebang is done quite nicely. Like I said, there's no real voice acting here, except some general sounds in some of the animated segments, like a scream or whatever, but it could have been interesting to maybe have some dino or animal sounds at some specific points to emphasize certain things, but I feel it's still okay like this. Good or great voice acting can absolutely elevate stuff like this to the next level, but bad voice acting can actually be a total detriment and get it a level lower. I'm in general neutral on the lack of voice acting here, especially because it's a lower budget and lower priced title. There is one technical issue I had with the game. Don't play this in full screen. I don't know why, maybe it's inherent to the RenPy engine or something else messed up for me here, but playing this in full screen seems to limit the FPS of that monitor and the game itself to about 20, which is very noticeable just because of the screen flickering, the way the text moves choppily on the screen, and how choppily your cursor moves on the screen as well, if you're using your cursor of course. I myself have a 144Hz monitor, so it's probably a lot more outspoken for me, but even on a 60Hz screen I can't imagine this going unnoticed. So just play it in a maximized window like I did. Nothing gets lost by not playing it in full screen or anything, so it's no real big deal, but it made it a bit more annoying for me personally to record footage. I didn't actually know what to expect from Wani Gator at the start, to be honest. I saw the game pass by a few times on Steam, but dismissed it for the most part until I got a key gifted to me by someone I know who actually worked on the game to check it out. And I do want to state clearly that that fact has nothing to do with my opinions I have on the game itself. But what I did get here, the whole emotional journey of the story, was a lot more and a lot better than I expected in almost every aspect. I initially assumed it might be boorish, or a funny XD meme game, or just bad, but it wasn't any of those things really. Reading through Wani Gator can be a real emotional roller coaster, which goes up or down depending on the ending you get. At the end of my first playthrough, I genuinely cared for and felt bad for the characters throughout their journey of their final year in high school. The stress and anxiety of not knowing what to do with the rest of your life, not having a vision for your future, not knowing whether you're good enough, not knowing whether your friends actually are your friends, struggling with self-image, struggling with self-worth. It goes through quite a lot of mature topics that, even for me, being out of high school for quite a while at this point, these subjects still ring true for. The story itself touches on a lot of these aspects in general. Friendship, love, bullying, disabilities, self-acceptance, art, loss, relationships, meaning of life. You know, all the heavy, I'm actually becoming an adult stuff that I assume a lot of people have went through in their own life one way or another, or are still going through this, or have to go through this still. For me personally, the last years of high school were not this serious and dramatic, of course, but I do recognize moments, feelings, thoughts and interactions from my own time as a young adult, especially as a largely introverted person and, at this moment, retarded autistic YouTube man. I will obviously get more into the details as I get into spoiler territory and stuff, but in my opinion, the writing in general here is very good, and I did not expect this level of writing and maturity in a funny 4chan Dino Girl on Wheels style visual novel. Now, as this is, in fact, a visual novel, there's no real gameplay to speak of here. just story, so that's what the rest of this video is going to be about, essentially. I'll sketch the initial setup of the story before diving into the more in-depth story beats and the different endings and spoilers, but I will give you a warning before I get into actual spoiler territory, which is best experienced firsthand, of course. There is actually one tiny little part of gameplay. You can draw a picture, which is just a little Microsoft Paint type drawing board you get once or twice during the game, but it's pretty funny and a nice little break at that moment. So, in Wani Gator, you play as Guy Incognito. Real name Incognito, a human rich kid with absent parents and a passion for photography. After moving to yet another city for yet another year of high school for his senior year this time, he starts attending St. Hammond, a high school renowned for its arts program located in the city of Volcaldera. Here, Inco hopes to hone his photography to make a career out of it eventually and also make some friends. Though Inco certainly isn't that determined to do anything, really. He's someone that doesn't have any real friends, no real interests, no loving parents, kissless, handholdless virgin. He is a loser and therefore will resonate a lot with the fortune audience. In all seriousness, this is in fact his last year of high school and he is determined about one thing: making some friends, which he never really managed before as, like I said, he moves around every single year because of the job his parents have, so he never really made any real deep connections, which is actually quite sad. As he gets to school for his first day, he realizes he's in a similar situation as the dude from My Gym Partner is a Monkey. He is the only human in a school full of anthropomorphic dinosaur people. One of these scaly fuckers makes quite the entrance in one of these rare but amazing animated segments. This gator skater that drifts through the halls on her four-wheeler is the main focus of the rest of the story. She is Olivia, the titular gator, even though she's actually supposed to be a baryonyx. There's a lot of different dinos that get represented here, by the way, with the rest of the main cast consisting of a Dilophosaurus-Spinosaurus hybrid, a Brachiosaurus, a Parasaurolophus, a Pterodactyl, and other minor characters, almost all being a different species. There's even mammal anthros here too, like Coach Sully being some primate, as well as the Soldier from Team Fortress 2, and Mr. Ferris being a whale, who also happens to be the uncle of the Brachiosaur. Make that make sense. In terms of world building, there's not a giant amount of lore about the dinos or history of the world in general, aside from some minor snippets here and there and a dino-specific holiday standing out. Which makes sense that the first dino guy you meet doesn't immediately start rattling off the history of his people or his cultural customs, of course. There are obvious physical differences between the species though, and these do get mentioned and play large roles in the story itself, like Liz's long neck, Damien's acidic spit, Olivia's tail, Ferris's goofy teeth, stuff like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Inco, as the only human here, gets a lot of attention at the start purely by virtue of being unique. This doesn't last too long though, and he already starts fearing the worst after the initial hype dies down. This is when he meets Ben, the student council president, and gets a tour of the school, while also sharing a common interest of photography with the guy. During this tour, Inco notices a painting which hangs in one of the halls. This painting gets shown to you, and this is what I mentioned with those amazing drawings from time to time. I just really like this artwork, and while it may not 100% capture the intended feeling of amazement that Inco thinks of it in the text, it certainly gets a good part of the way there. As it turns out, and you can actually figure this out for yourself a bit earlier if you're paying attention, this piece of art was made by Olivia, the gator skater in question. This then starts to paint the picture on who Olivia is and was, and ignites the question, how did she go from the person who made that amazing painting to what she is now, which is just an asocial asshole? These things all get explored as you go through the story and push enough on certain topics. So the story goes on. you meet Damien, who is one of those social butterflies who befriends everyone within 50 milliseconds, who then invites you to lunch after you almost get killed during dodgeball by Mia, my wife and my beloved. At lunch, and after your first run-in with her during Yarakan's class, you actually meet Olivia, who actually lives at Damien's place because of their family situation and whatnot. Eventually, you also meet Liz, the brachiosaur, who's a member of the student council, and an overall snooty, I feel better than you type girl. She's not an asshole about it in general, but she can have her moments. This gaggle of dino friends becomes the gang. And throughout the friendship with Damien, you stay in contact with Olivia, and thanks to the arts teacher Yarakan, you actually have a shot at penetrating the scaly exterior of whatever shell Olivia has burrowed herself into. Metaphorically speaking, of course, this is a dino Christian household after all. We worship Raptor Jesus in this house. The first real break point, or tipping point, or fulcrum of the story, I guess whatever you want to call it, is the fountain scene after it's revealed that Olivia swapped out a work of hers with a picture of Incos for an upcoming art contest. This is the same contest she won with that painting in the hall, and that's the reason it's up there in the first place. And since she won the contest before, she can't compete again because it just wouldn't be fair, obviously. Which then of course begs the question, why did she actually try to compete again under a different name? And it is here that I would actually already like to draw the spoilers line. I hope that what I told you so far has made you intrigued enough to read through it yourself, with the common starting point of all the ending branches being interesting enough to go through, with enough jokes, references, animations and intrigue to keep you wanting more. I will say that in general, I definitely recommend this title. It is one of the few games, or rather it is one of the few stories in games that actually made me tear up during the emotional peaks. Once in sadness, once in happiness, once somewhere in between. It also made me laugh out loud at points just because of how silly some lines, jokes and references can be, as well as having me cackle in pure surprise at another ending. The writing in general, especially the big emotional beats, just feels very honest. It's real. Who knew that brain-dead retarded autists on 4chan could make something that actually tugs at your heartstrings like this, right? It feels real and believable, which for a story like this one is the main goal. Definitely very well done writing across the board here in my opinion. The early conflict with Olivia definitely rings true for me as well. I've been in her shoes before, not wanting to open up to people, feeling like shit, not wanting to join a family gathering or a party, feeling like I'm a creep. Also, just in terms of playtime, according to Steam, I got almost 25 hours into the game. That isn't 100% accurate because I did have it open while not playing it and taking notes for some time, but even then, that's still at least 20 hours of actually reading through it, with skipping through already seen text for the different endings. All of this to say, the game is definitely worth picking up. Not just if you're interested in the premise of the game, but also just in general, it's worth picking it up. I was very pleasantly surprised by this title. Real props to the dev team for this little gem that for me came out of nowhere. And I do want to reiterate, this is not just because I got a free key for it. I genuinely think this game is just very well done. So, from this point on, I'll get into spoilers. I'll discuss the big moments, as well as the different endings and my interpretation of the overall themes and all of that stuff. So if you haven't read through it yourself, or still have some endings you still want to go through first, I would suggest doing that before watching the spoiler part of the video, and you can still just click ahead to the conclusion part and hear my final thoughts on the game. There are also a few guides online that line out what choices have what consequences, so it's not that hard to figure out what to do after your first ending and trying to get the other ones. So, without further ado, let's dive a bit deeper into these gator-infested waters. The whole Olivia bamboozled you thing came as an initial surprise to me. Why did she do this? What's her deal? Why did she try to fuck you over like this? All of this gets revealed if you push her hard enough here during the fountain conversation. If you don't push, this never gets revealed or resolved, really, and you even need to push her here if you want the true ending. In essence, it boils down to this. Olivia wanted to be judged on her art, and her art alone, since her initial win was largely due to Ben writing a piece on her as the handicapped artist who can actually do art. Wow, so cool. This event was the main catalyst as to what broke Olivia and put her into the state she is in now. She felt utterly and completely betrayed by the one friend she had, who, to her, just used her for her disability for his own means. Obviously, Ben didn't think this at all, and him having his own disability in the form of a mental illness plays into this, as he clearly says so at the Winter Formal Showdown in the true ending. This also means that Olivia doesn't have any confidence in her skill as an artist because she feels people just say her art is good because she's in a wheelchair. Obviously, Olivia and her disability play a big role throughout the entire story and every ending as well. There's 4 endings in total, as I learned at my own first ending being ending 2 of 4, and this ending was sad. And since the worst ending is 1 and the best is 4, we can safely say this was the second to worst ending to get. In this ending, Inko and Olivia just go through the motions after graduation. Inko gets a corporate job and seemingly loses his passion for photography, and Olivia tries to break through in the art world, but can't, as all the relevant opportunities she gets would play on the fact she's disabled, and she obviously doesn't want that. This then ends with a fight and a pretty melancholic thought process of Inko, with a bleak future of a broken couple ahead who kinda just hate their life as it is. While I am not disabled myself, I can understand the thought process behind this. I've known some disabled people, and all of them hated it when their disability became the largest part of their identity. No one wants to be defined by this, it seems, and even if it comes out of a genuine place of trying to help or right the wrongs of it, so to speak, it can come off as pandering or patronizing or simply not wanting to accept that person for who they are instead of focusing on that which they are not. But I also understand what Inko says here, that maybe you should just use that as your own ladder to climb in the case of others wanting to use your disability as their own way of getting somewhere, with the interviewer wanting to write a piece on the disabled artist. This doesn't mean the art itself is suddenly better or worse for it, and with how subjective art is and whether you subscribe to the notion of separating the art from the artist, focusing on that disability, that trauma, that part of you that has irritated you, that has caused you grief and pain and made you hate yourself at times, isn't that too part of what makes an artist? Or your art your art? Is that not too part of what makes you you? I do feel that this game does a good job of playing both sides in that argument, and it's never easy to get to a situation where everyone is happy regardless of any disabilities or baggage. The fact that there was never any mention of the specific nature of Olivia's disability, aside from the one thought Inko has about it being probably the bottom part of her legs not working, since she can just shuffle on her upper legs around, is nice, and it does help to not paint Olivia as just the Gator wheelchair chick. The majority of character development on Olivia's part focuses on her perception of herself as a person and as an artist, especially in the context of Iadecan passing away and all of that. And then you got Ben acting all high and mighty, talking about her as some sort of challenge to be overcome by Inko, as opposed to a real person with actual feelings, and then you don't have to wonder why the two of them aren't friends anymore. On the romance front, Inko and Olivia ending up together makes sense, but it happening after Iarakan passed away raises some eyebrows, which get mentioned by other characters too, such as Damien, who essentially tells Inko to maybe be careful about this, as especially Olivia is extremely emotionally vulnerable at that moment. After the actual confession, and once Inko and Olivia are officially a couple, I did fear their dynamic would become less interesting. In my experience, the building up part to a confession/relationship is usually the most well written and thus interesting and engaging part of a story like this, with it usually dropping the ball once characters get together, as the main goal and source of conflict and motivation is resolved once the confession actually happens. In general though, this didn't seem to be the case here. Inko and Olivia keep interacting very similarly after as before, which is the best in my opinion. A romantic relationship is, in the end, the best portrayed when it is in essence a very good friendship with some added spice to it. And that spice in Wani Gator never gets much more than just a few kisses and hugs and stuff like that. There's no real fucking here or anything, which is actually a good thing, because I do feel like that if there were actual sex scenes like in Katawa Shoujo for example, that would actually be a detriment to the type of story this is. As I mentioned, the first big emotional breakthrough and story moment is, in my mind, the first fountain scene after the whole art contest debacle. The fountain, being the title screen at the start of the game, also paints how pivotal this location and scenes connected to it are. The second big emotional breakthrough is when Iarakan passes away. Iarakan was, to Olivia especially, but to Inko and even Ben as well, a true mentor. He's a bit of a goofster, but it's clear that his heart was in the right place and he was dearly beloved by his students. And if Olivia didn't have Iarakan's guidance and support throughout her years of high school, she might not even be here as an artist, or even be here at all. The different endings all kind of sprout out of the way Olivia handles Iarakan's passing, or rather how she does not handle it at times. The more she had support in you through your choices up to that point, the better she copes with it, with the best ending having her work tirelessly at a painting dedicated to the man, and the worst ending having her in absolute emotional disarray. It's also clear, and actually even foreshadowed in a sense, what ending you're on with the date you go on with Olivia, since every ending has its own unique date. The best ending has you going to a Hachibana grill, the second best on a stroll through the park, the second worst to an arts gallery, and the actual worst to the mall. I'll start with the worst ending first, the mall date, and go up as we get to better endings. In this situation, Olivia just doesn't want to go in the first place, really. Her wheelchair got fucked up after Iarakan died, and the date coincides with her getting a new one for all endings, and in this bad one, she hadn't even opened the box it came in. It's clear she hasn't processed anything yet and is only in the process of digging herself into an emotional abyss. Inko has the idea of getting her outside to cheer her up, which isn't that bad of an idea, but he then chooses to just go to a shopping center where there's some meet and greet with a niche YouTuber video essayist kinda guy, who then shows up late to his own meet and greet, shows up drunk, and starts beating up one of his fans, who were all wearing some kid anime merch or something. It's all pretty weird like that. No idea whether this is a specific reference to some anime review man in real life or anything, by the way, but this was pretty funny just to see how bad this date went. The ending in this gets foreshadowed through Olivia's total disinterest and disconnecting, as well as Inko feeling the need to push his own feelings and views onto her. This gets amplified to an insane degree with the winter formal, which is the apex of the story for all endings. It's kind of like a mid-year prom. It's where everything comes together and where Iarakan gets a vigil dedicated to him as well. So it's a very emotionally loaded evening. So for all endings, Inko and the gang meet up at Damien's place to go to the formal together. Damien is going with Liz on a date and Inko with Olivia as a date. Inko also hires a surprise limo to get them there in style. being a rich kid and all that. Everyone is just making small talk in the living room and is waiting for Olivia to show up in her dress. And she does, and it's a very nice dress, but she acts like a total jackass, swinging some of the best insults in the entire game towards Liz, getting her dress messed up and flying off the handle against Vinny, the, at this point, sick little brother of Damien, which eventually just widens the cliff there already was due to everything going on and the emotional stress and all of that, and Inko and Olivia get in the limo on their own, with Damien and Liz getting there separately. Inko then takes a detour to get Olivia a new dress, and oh man, this is just hilarious how completely out of touch with anything Inko is during this entire ending. He just forces some insanely expensive revealing dress on her, because why not? And then is fashionably late at the formal, barely even making it at all. As they arrive and Olivia makes her way backstage to prepare for the eulogy, Inko actually dances with Mia here of all people, the local high school mean girl and bully who you have had quite the altercations with at this point, which almost made me expect some school days shenanigans here, but it was more of a sociopathic heart under the belt Inko got from her here, instead of some dino sloppy in the hall. Another theme in this bad ending is Inko's penchant to want to take pictures at the absolute worst moments for some reason, which gets resolved beautifully here, when Olivia gets up on stage, pouring her heart out as part of the eulogy for Yerkan, and Inko actually taking a picture. This face right here is absolutely haunting, man, and I genuinely cackled at how insanely sociopathic this behavior is. Predictably, Inko gets socked by Damien and eventually manages to escape, meeting Olivia in the hallway. This then just turns into absolute horror as Inko somehow thinks a single Wani hug that Gator will fix anything. Olivia then tells him he hates him and eventually falls down the stairs as she tries to get away from his final hug attempt, and as a result lands in a coma. The game then ends with a "This was not my fault, I should have expected this." Absolutely unhinged. What about the sad ending then? The one I got to in my first playthrough? Well, stuff actually seemed to go a lot better up to the winter formal. The date was one planned out by Olivia and she was absolutely giddy about it, as she actually had a good friend in you with the whole Yerkan thing. This date goes to an arts gallery, where there's also some paintings of Yerkan here coincidentally. This does seem to have some kind of adverse effect on Olivia. Maybe she feels like she simply can't live up to her master and she kind of tries to overcompensate at the formal by announcing herself as Yerkan's student and apprentice, which then goes horribly wrong, though even that was mainly just advice from Inko on it. But there definitely seems to be going something on here with Olivia. A funny thing to mention here, by the way, is the prank Olivinko play here, with the put camera on a wheelchair to fake a modern art exhibit thing that I'm sure most of you have seen some memes floating around of on the internet, with people in real life misplacing something in a museum, coming back for it and finding it unturned as the newest star exhibit. But the funny part here is that due to this being Olivia's idea and it being deliberate with an intention to make a statement, that being that modern art is pretentious, this now becomes actual modern art in itself. Art paradox, baby. So anyways, everything goes fairly okay up to the formal, where Olivia kinda didn't prepare her speech, which then results in her fumbling the bag and going all angry on the audience, calling her out for making this about herself instead of about Yerkan, which they are actually kinda right about. This then spirals into Inko also flying off the handle against Olivia, with him then making it about him, because it would make him look bad because Olivia made a bit of a mistake following his advice. Do you notice the trend here? The worse the ending, the more self-centered and self-absorbed Inko is. The worst ending is literally all about him. Here it's a bit less, but it's still there, and as we'll see with the better ones, it becomes less about him the better it goes for everyone else. But that's what it means to be in a relationship, right? Not everything is or can be about you. Not everything is or can be about someone else either. It's a give and take situation. Give too much and you risk losing yourself. Take too much and you risk losing someone else. I might not be too eloquent explaining all of this or communicating my thoughts very clearly, but the reactions of characters to certain things being said or stuff being done here all comes off as very realistic, which is a very good thing here. Anyways, after this little lovers spat, winter break begins. It takes a while for Inko to message Olivia and saying they'll give it another shot when school begins again, which means Inko is alone for the entire winter break, wallowing in his own retardation. Surprisingly, the game then skips forward to the epilogue, with the second part of the semester just being a blur. All normal endings have an epilogue like this, which are all of the endings where Olivia doesn't end in a coma. I've already described this specific epilogue at the start of the spoiler section, in case you don't remember, but essentially both Inko and Olivia kinda lost something that they don't gain back. They have each other, sure, in a way, but neither of them is happy. This also ends with a bit of a physical altercation and this beautiful piece of a rose in bloodied water. I almost expected it to make a turnaround here, with this being a piece that Olivia makes after the fight or something, and everything being alright in the end, as it would be her big breakthrough, but that might have been just a hopeful little Talzin who was feeling pretty sad at this ending. At last we get to the bittersweet ending. In this one, Olivia and Inko go on a date to the park. Get some great views there, but it seems that Olivia never managed to get a good speech prepared for the formal, and she just gives up and doesn't even want to bother. This then results in the two going on a little adventure to the city to kind of get away from it all, foregoing the formal entirely. Here they see a performance by a wandering troupe of fire dancers, who just so happens to be on their last performance of their current leader. He steps down in a grand ceremony and lets his granddaughter take the reins, with the message here being that the grandfather looks extremely proud of her, even if she doesn't get every step right yet, or is at the same skill he was. It's still clear she has passion and talent and will likely surpass her grandpa in skill one day, thanks to the training she received from him. This is an extremely obvious parallel to Ierekan and Olivia, of course, and Olivia actually has this breakthrough here herself, thankfully, and the moment the light flickers on in her mind, the couple rush back to the formal to give a last-minute speech, buying a dress from a store right as the train arrives, and getting in last minute, and Inko running his heart out to push Olivia to get them there in time, like in the final act of your average rom-com, and then it was too late. They didn't make it in time. Olivia, after grasping what she needed, was too late to share this revelation with the world. This eventually gets her in quite the depression, and she even manages to completely fumble her final semester, not graduating at all. In the epilogue then, she's getting by as an art streamer, which seems to have its ups and downs, and is frankly a step down of what she wanted or deserved. Inko is in college here, and finally Olivia does get a bit of closure visiting the high school again, is on her way to reconnect with Damien's family a bit, as well as finally visiting Ierekan's grave and telling him what she realized the night of the formal. Perhaps too little, too late though. Then, finally, we come to the good ending, which made me so happy at the end that I sat through the entire credits with a genuine smile on my face and tears of happiness welling up a bit. Here, Olivia seems to realize about herself and Ierekan what she realized watching those fire dancers, but she realizes it for herself a lot sooner. This prompts her to work on a piece of dedication to the man, which she finishes just in the nick of time before the formal, with the date being the Hachibana grill, which is just a cute date overall, where nothing really goes wrong, and Olivia gets called Wani, which is very cute. They also go Christmas shopping, which is just very nice, you know, they see a giant Christmas tree. It's just a very cute and wholesome date, so nothing really to mention here specifically. The winter formal event here is packed though, holy shit. You got Olivia finishing and displaying her painting at the memorial. Ben and Olivia making up after their history, with Mia being revealed as a truly evil and manipulative bitch. I could fix her, since she's controlling Ben by withholding his antipsychosis meds he needs, which then ties into the thing of Olivia having a visible disability and getting support for it, and him having an invisible one, which formed his reasoning around the piece he wrote that broke Olivia in the first place. Then Inko actually gets to dance with Olivia, who had been practicing in secret to do so with just her tail as support, which then again ties into some stuff about her feeling like she almost betrays the ones who are disabled but have no tail to use like her. In general, it's all just very wholesome and positive all around, except for Ben maybe. Ben does get accepted into the group and gets some ice cream with them later. The dancing animation here is beautiful, by the way. It's all just so wholesome here. It just made me feel happy. And this gets carried over to the post-formal stuff, where the gang is out at a beach house on the caldera in Volcaldera, having the time of their life. This then culminates in this great piece of art, where everyone draws a cool little moment from the story on a big page, harkening back to the first drawing game thing with Olivia at the start of the story. And you get to draw the final piece on the canvas. I drew Yarakan teaching here. It only felt right. The epilogue then is basically everyone being successful and happy, really. Inko and Olivia end up working for a film production company, with Inko scouting out locations with his photography and Olivia drawing posters with her art. Liz manages her planned out art house where she sells art, including some of Olivia's pieces, which is also a throwback to a discussion they had during the lunch at the Space Needle. Ben is also just happy and successful here, I think, and Damien, of course, just ends up being an actor because he is just that based and easygoing. It's just the best ending overall, might be even too happy and positive really, well, aside for Ben maybe. I feel pretty sad for the guy, but at least he got the Lunusi. After going through all the different dialogue options and endings, through the entire thing, everything fits together really well. Finding out about Ben and Olivia's painting made so much clear, which was just context I lacked during my first playthrough, which made the scene of Yarakan destroying the painting a bit out of nowhere. But now it makes sense. The painting is just a symbol of this stigma, this constant in Olivia's life of being a cripple first and a person after, so it makes a lot of sense why destroying this is so meaningful when you do have that context. The credits here for the final true ending is also quite special, as you actually get tiny little epilogues for all of the side characters you meet through all different endings. I don't know if you actually have to go through all endings and then this one to get all of the side characters you don't meet during the true ending, but you got people like the fire dancers, for example, which you only meet during the bittersweet ending, having their little epilogue, so it was just very nice to have it all tied up, It was very, very nice, very wholesome, very positive. In conclusion, Wani Hug That Gator is actual Kino. Maybe it's simply the time I spent with the characters and getting attached to them, but towards the end of just my first run through, I felt like there was an emotional connection there, or rather I felt emotionally connected to the characters. I cared for them and I was sad for them. And that, to me, and in general, I believe, is one of the cornerstones of good pieces of media. The reason you can connect to these characters in the first place is that they are believable, of course, and they definitely are. After getting ending 2 first, the sad ending, I was actually sad and thankful that there were 3 more endings, which were hopefully better to go through still. After then taking the right amount of notes and making the right amount of saves at key decisions, I managed to get the endings in essentially ascending order. The bad ending, the sad ending again because I messed up some choices, the bittersweet ending after that, and of course the good ending. And let me tell you, Wani Gator is one of those rare experiences that made me tear up in a good way. I am not a super emotional guy when it comes to stuff like that, but I have had genuine emotional reactions like that in the past when watching movies, reading books, watching series, playing games, just experiencing any kind of media really, and actually cracking a genuine smile or tearing up out of happiness or sadness for fictional characters might sound weird to some people, but to me it only cements that a piece of media is genuinely good. In the end, I feel like that's what art is all about, eliciting emotions. And I do consider every form of media as a potential vessel for art. Not every video game or book or movie or song or whatever is art, but any game or book or movie or song can be art. It's like the Ratatouille thing in a sense. Everyone can cook. Well, everything can be art. Doesn't mean everything is art, but it does mean that art can come from everywhere. In the end, this is just a visual novel, right? An interactive book with choices and added music and some very nice art and animations. In a sense, a visual novel is an evolution on a book, a novel, in the same way that games like Uncharted, often called movie games, are in a sense an evolution on a movie. All of this lyrical, philosophical mumbo-jumbo to say, I Wani Hug That Gator is great. It hit home for me. The characters are great, the writing is good and believable, the music is nice, the art is beautiful, the animated segments are amazing, and the entire experience is just well worth its price tag. And that is it for me, essentially. I apologize for the long video, but again, I was surprised by how good the game actually was and felt the need to clearly explain why, which isn't something you can do for a visual novel without diving deeper into the story, obviously. I hope you enjoyed the video, thank you so very much for watching, and I also hope I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Kisses.